First, I'm just going to quickly introduce myself and situate where I work. So I work at Feuchtwanger Memorial Library. It's a tongue twister, and I'll say more just about the materials that we have. And mostly what I'll be talking about today is a partnership that I have with the USC School of Dramatic Arts, the SDA for short. Like all institutions, we're really big on acronyms. So I've put on this slide for you that I'm going to be using a few. FML is just shorthand for the collection I work with. SDA is the School of Dramatic Arts. And the partnership program that we do together is called Feuchtwanger Refreshed. So in the slides, I've also listed that as FR just for shorthand. And then I'm just going to share about two of these programs that I've produced. So the first one was called The Fire Last Time. This was an event and, instructional collaboration in spring 2025. And then the last one was Feuchtwanger Refreshed Road to Yosemite. And this was in spring 2026. I'll talk a little bit about ideas I have for the future and then really kind of try to start the idea sharing, share out some of the lessons learned, and then we'll launch into a discussion, which we'll turn the recording off for to kind of hear your thoughts on maybe scaling this down for your library or possibly scaling up. So that's the general outline for today. So Feuchtwanger Memorial Library, FML for short, contains the rare book collection of Leon Feuchtwanger, who lived 1884 to 1958. He was a German Jew. He was a playwright. He was a novelist, an essayist, an anti-fascist activist, and he went into exile from the Nazi period in 1933. He lived first in France and then moved to the United States with his wife, Marta, in about 1940, 1941. So the couple ended their lives in Los Angeles in the Pacific Palisades, which I'll talk a little bit about. And then they donated their rare book collection of about 30,000 volumes to the university, as well as their archive. So Leon's correspondence, his manuscripts, their family photographs, etc. Because of this collection, we've also, over time, USC has created a real subject strength in German exiles, so refugees of the Nazi period who lived here in Southern California. So we also have additional archival holdings of other German exiles, German-speaking exiles, so either from Germany, Austria, or Switzerland, Jews and non-Jews alike. So that's a little bit about the collection I'm working with. It's rare books as well as archives. And so the USC School of Dramatic Arts is a really robust school on campus. They have many undergraduate degrees, BAs and BFAs in kind of the more generalized subjects, and then actually quite focused kind of practical things like sound design, stage management, etc. I've been working specifically with faculty in a graduate program, so a Master of Fine Arts in Dramatic Arts, specifically dramatic writing. There's also the MFA in acting. And so there's a legacy faculty partner who worked with my predecessor. And so this partnership was just kind of inherited by me. So I also want to specify I was very fortunate. Like I joined USC about 2.5 years ago, and this partnership was already established for 7 years. So don't compare if you're going to be starting kind of from the ground up. I really inherited this infrastructure to kind of keep this program going. And so my partner is Professor Oliver Mayer. He is a professor in dramatic writing, and he's an associate dean of faculty and strategic initiatives. He personally is interested in immigration topics. He has written many, many plays, novels, like a children's book. And he's been at USC for, I think, 20 years. So he's very engaged on campus, has won grants and awards from the university. So he's a very public and well-connected partner at campus. And another piece of this partnership is an off-campus partner. And this is the Villa Aurora. So this is a property. It's the former home of Leon and Marta Feuchtwanger, and it's located in Pacific Palisades, like I mentioned. And so we have an interesting relationship where part of the collection is housed at Villa Aurora, but it's not actually USC. It's not a USC property. So it's an off-campus, and it's administered separately from USC, but I work in conjunction with them because we have part of the book collection on permanent loan there, since it's the former home of Leon and Marta. It's 19 miles from USC campus. So we don't do that much in-person programming, but occasionally we do. But I work with them a lot, and it's a nonprofit artist residency. And they host about 20 artists who work in the visual arts, composition, film, literature. They get to stay in the home for 3 months. And Villa Aurora is hosting a lot of events and programming in conjunction with these artists. So it can be a showcase of the artists who were on resident. It can be about someone from a past year. So they host, film screenings. They host public lectures, music concerts, all kinds of different arts and cultural programs. So we've really relied on them as a programming partner. So they have played a role in helping with some funding. So they've helped with catering fees. We have hosted in the past at physically at the villa, but the two events I'm going to talk about, we didn't host at the villa. So one partner, one piece of the puzzle is Villa Aurora. So, what is the project? It's called Feuchtwanger Refreshed, and it's an ongoing series. So, as I mentioned, it was started by my predecessor, Michaela Ullmann, and Maria Schutze-Coburn. And one of the amazing things about my work at USC is that both of these predecessors are still at the university. So there's so much institutional knowledge with them, and that they're my colleagues. So they introduced me right away when I started the position to Oliver. And of course, I work with Villa Aurora quite closely. So these are all the partners involved. And what is Feuchtwanger Refreshed? It's a project. So it's an embedded course project that Oliver Mayer is really heading with his students. And the students are given a writing prompt that I collaboratively design with Oliver. And it's somehow inspired by Leon or Marta, either their lives and experience they had, as well as specific artifacts, records, manuscripts from the archive. And so for a graded project, the students write short plays, about 3 to 5 minutes each, and then they perform them at the end of the semester. And I organize that performance event in close partnership with Oliver, of course. So, past writing prompts before my time. One performance was about Feuchtwanger's memoir, where it's called The Devil in France. It's available online for free. And he talks about in this memoir his imprisonment in a French internment camp, and how he escaped. Another Feuchtwanger Refresh series event focused on writing ideas that were in Leon's notebooks. So, unpublished ideas that he had written about in his manuscripts, as I'm thinking about a character like this or a setting like this. And so those ideas were presented to the students, and then they wrote from there. And then another one was about a letter that Feuchtwanger wrote, like a very satirical letter that was published in the newspaper in 1933 from exile. So when he was in France already, about the Nazi who is now occupying his home in Berlin. So those are some past topics. Um, but the two events that I worked on, I'm going to share more in depth about how we came up with the prompt, what I contributed, what Professor Mayer brought to the table, and how we kind of made the event happen. So the first event that I hosted, co-produced, was in spring 2025. And this one we actually hosted at an off-campus location, the Vendy Museum, which is just a Los Angeles-based museum that the Villa is connected with. The museum and the art world, it's all quite small. So they know the director. He serves on the board at the Villa Aurora. So really just a connection there. And the title was The Fire Last Time. And where did that come from? So, January 2025, at the start of the semester, at the start of the year, there was a fire that reached the property of Villa Aurora. If anyone is in the Los Angeles area, you probably remember this. It was called the Palisades Fire. There was actually like just as big of a fire the other part of town. So the Eaton fire was happening kind of more in the Valley area or like Pasadena, and then the Palisades were on fire. So it was a really crazy experience being in LA. Here on the screen, I have a picture of the house. You can see some of the garden burned. The building itself was not burned, which is honestly a miracle. Both properties, so the neighbors on the left and on the right, their entire structure was burned to the ground. So it's remarkable that the villa survived. But as you can see in the photo on the screen, obviously there was still ash debris, and I'm working even now as it's, summer 2026. I'm still working with the book conservator to kind of get all of these USC, the FML collection that's housed there, assessed and cleaned properly. But it was such a miraculous event and that I experienced from USC campus, but working with the Villa folks. And so as we were all emailing and on the phone like every day for a few weeks together, we thought, you know what, this has to be the topic of a Feuchtwanger Refreshed. Um, and my predecessor, Michael Ullmann, I mentioned, remembered that in Marta's lifetime, so in 1961, there was a fire that came close to the villa as well. But the villa survived then. And so we started to look in the archive. I found this Daily Trojan article. So this is like our student campus, student authored newspaper. So they reported on the front page in 1961 that trucks remove collection as flames near library. So during Marta's life, when she was actually already a widow, so Leon passed in 1958 from cancer. But Marta lived for another 25, 30 years. And so she was in the home in the Palisades with his book collection. Entirely was still housed there, hadn't been given physically yet to the university, but they were in, conversation about the gift. And there was a fire. And Marta kind of testifies about this experience in her oral history, which was conducted by Lawrence Weschler and published in 1976. And so I went into the testimony. I found where she talks about it. It's about 6, 7 pages of text where she talks about the experience of seeing a fire come over kind of the freeway. She called the librarian in the evening to say, hey, what are we going to do? Should we evacuate the collection? The next day, USC Library sends trucks. They're packing up. She talks about how she called her gardener and him and his wife came to help pack books. The secretary, Hilda Valdo, was helping to pack books. She talked about how the fire department shows up. She was the last person on the street to stay, and the fire department said, okay, even though, hesitantly they said okay to this older woman who was just kind of didn't want to go. Finally, she evacuated, etc. So we were so interested in these kind of parallels between 1961 Bel Air fire and the Palisades fire of January 2025. So here is the assignment that Oliver gave to his students, again in this MFA course. So graduate students who are in the Masters of Fine Arts in Dramatic Writing. So he wrote task. So you're going to write no more than 5 minutes. Always, we kept keep it short. 5 minutes of material to be performed at this event. And for this event, we had the students perform it themselves. So the writers, they acted as characters in each other's plays. And the assignment said use Marta's memoir as a moment to examine the effects and after effects of catastrophe. Oliver and I had a lot of conversations about this, that we didn't want it to be a negative tone. Living through the Palisades fire obviously was quite stressful, and obviously neighbors in the community in the Palisades lost everything, but we wanted to focus on resilience and a positive piece. And so you'll see that in the next slide. In the way that we presented the prompt to the students, we really tried to come from that mindset. So again, in 2025, as in 1961, fire came within feet of the Villa Aurora. The home and the books were saved both times. And so he gave kind of these starting point for students to think about disaster, survival, resilience, as well as diaspora. Like exile is always a piece of the puzzle when we're working with FML. And so his guidance, he prompted the students by kind of sharing the themes that he wanted the plays to focus on. So he provided providence, resilience, the worst thing that could happen, but then that's averted. And then also this what now. And for this project, he did actually prompt them also with some potential characters to explore. So obviously Marta, which as a side note, in the two events that I've done with Oliver, we've focused on Marta specifically, because historically there's always been more focus on Leon as like the author himself, but we want to bring like women's perspectives into it. So Marta is kind of the main character in this event, but then also for the second one I'll talk about. Maybe the spirit or the ghost of Leon, he suggested. Hilda is the secretary, as well as the gardener, who is mentioned in the oral history as well. He also suggested to students to consider, non-human characters, so the books themselves, the turtle, so the couple owned a tortoise, and then the fire itself. So here are some pictures from the event. This one was a larger event since we hosted at this professional level theater at the Vende Museum. I think there are like 90 seats. We probably had 40, 45 people. But as you can see from the photo, like, it's a real stage. There's lighting and microphones. So this might seem daunting to you, but you're going to see in the second event, it was much lower production value. So don't be intimidated by this very nice, fancy picture. Then, of course, this is after the performance with the student writers, Oliver, and then Friedel, who helps to organize events at the villa. And again, as I mentioned, the plays are short. They're 3 to 5 minutes. Because the class is small, it's a graduate class, each person writes one play. But if it's a bigger class, you could totally have co-written plays. So I just wanted to show one short, like one of the plays. And I picked this one. It's called Field Trip by Alessandra Villegas. And I picked this one because it's library related. You're going to see that there are characters, including books. And so the setting is that the fire is approaching based on the 1961 testimony. And you'll hear Marta's character say some like verbatim text from the oral history. But the rest is, of course, the students creating their imagination. So let's see if this audio works.
Unfortunately, I don't think we're hearing anything.
Oh, okay. Let me pause. So what I can also do is open up the YouTube. Let's see.
I think either way, you'll have to share your audio in the Zoom.
Okay. Let me try that first. So get back to Zoom. Sorry, guys. I'm just working on one screen, so it's kind of confusing how many things I have going on. Does anybody have tips on how I need to?
If you unshare and share again, when you share, there should be some sort of a button or toggle to indicate you want to share your computer audio.
Okay, great. So I just stopped sharing. Thank you for that advice. And then I'm going to try again. Now I see share sound. Thank you so much. Let's see.
Field Trip by Alessandra Villegas.
Is there any sound?
Epigraph.
Okay, awesome. Oh, gosh. Might be. Thanks, everyone, for your patience here.
Field Trip by Alessandra Villegas. Epigraph. We pack the books in the gardener's truck. Characters, the books 1, 2, and 3, Marta, and the fire. The sound of a fire growing in the distance. Then it gets closer.
I'm hungry and growing. Different parts of me converging, coming together over hills. Feeding on brush and discarded waste and watching my embers fly. The more I eat, the hungrier I become. The more I spread, the angrier I become. Planes flying overhead, trying to sever my limbs. I won't let them. All I want to do is consume. All I want to do is...
Field trip! The day has finally arrived. I call shotgun.
Shh, can you quiet down?
This has to be a field trip. Look, it's a bus.
It looks more like a truck.
Good heavens.
You know, you don't have to still talk like that.
I haven't been opened in quite some time. I have not had a glimpse of the outside world. Or the modern language. This odor.
Like the ocean. Like the waves crashing on the shore. Like the feeling of salt spray sticking my pages together.
My illustrations! My ink will run. No one will look upon me. A travesty!
I don't smell the ocean. It smells like barbecue.
Barbecue?
I can't believe we finally get to feel that. The ocean always looked so far away, but now we're going to her. I mean, this has to be a beach field trip, right?
I wish to be opened before I enter the kingdom of heaven.
Leon never opened you? Weird, he was always opening me.
He's too fancy to be opened, too antique.
I do feel fragile.
I was open more than either of you. Liam was always scribbling down a note, putting me down, picking me back up.
I wanted to see a dolphin.
You think they're taking the entire library on a field trip?
OMG, all of our friends? This is the best day ever.
This barbecue odor. It resembles an inferno.
Inferno. That's one way to put it.
Oh, this makes sense. There are fire pits on the beach. People do barbecues there.
How would you know? I'm the only one Leanne has ever taken outside. I've actually seen a barbecue
At the beach?
in the neighbor's lawn from the backyard.
This is to be our end in the fiery pit of the barbecue, or to have our pages drenched by salty water. I will miss you both dearly.
Don't be so dramatic. Field trips are supposed to be fun.
There's something about this place. The books. So much fuel in such small packages. And the taste. Don't get me started on the taste. What can I say? I'm what you might call a connoisseur of literature, a bibliophile,
Suddenly, a pair of hands scoop up book 3 and throw them into the truck.
My spine!
Hey, be careful. He's really old.
They must want to beat the traffic.
You really don't smell that?
The smell of freedom, you mean? The smell of letting my pages get a little sunburned, but in a good way?
It's not a barbecue. It's fire. It really is an inferno. Look over the hill.
Nothing in my wake but ash. Nothing in my wake but ash up to the ankles.
They have to be able to put it out, right?
It's moving fast.
Hey, fire! Can you go up instead? We're going to the beach.
You can't just reason with nature.
Why not? People do that in my pages all the time.
Nature isn't rational.
I want to see the ocean. I want to...
A pair of hands scoop up book 1.
Yes! Here I go! Can I have a window seat, please?
Book 1 is thrown into the truck.
Ow.
Are you okay? Hey, it looks like the fire is getting closer. Oh my god, it's so bright. It's so...
Where are you going? You think you can escape me?
Book 2 is scooped up and thrown into the truck. Marta's voice is heard.
And then came the head librarian. He's not here anymore. He's now in San Francisco, I think. He had sent a big truck here, and then we began to pack the truck.
Hey, guys. I don't think we're going to the beach.
Then the fire department said, we have no time. Everybody has to be evacuated. There is no time to pack. So we just had to throw all the books into the truck.
Are you okay? I feel the smoke.
If this is the end, I'm happy to have been in your company.
It made me so sad to see them like that, piled on top of one another. I hope they know I did the right thing.
The sounds of the fire fade into the distance and are replaced with the sounds of the road.
Do you hear that?
I can't hear anything. You're all on top of me.
I'm sorry.
I apologize. I cannot feel anything at the moment. Are my pages wrinkled?
We were too close.
I hear the ocean. I hear...
Yes, much was damaged and also lost. A lot of books. The ones we did save were brought by the university.
Hands scoop up the books and carefully place them on the shelves. The 3 books inhale deeply.
The smell. It smells...
Like us. Another library?
It smells like home.
End of play.
So again, that was just one piece, and then there were, each student wrote one. But I wanted to share so you got a sense of what the event was like. And so as you saw, we recorded that event, and the funding for recording was hosted by Villa Aurora. And so they posted it on their YouTube. They also used the audio in a radio series that they do called If the House Could Speak, which my colleague Friedel at Villa Aurora created while the house was closed because of the fire remediation project. She started this radio program as a place to still be creating public cultural arts programming, but a pivot to the radio instead of in-person events. So the recording was on YouTube, and then the audio was also shared as part of this radio series. So as you saw, that was the first event. The second event that I worked on was much smaller. This was hosted in spring 2026. And this was hosted at USC campus in the library, in Feuchtwanger Memorial Library. So with the collection around them, which you'll see in the photos. And for this one, Oliver and I started with a topic first. So we are in conversation often. We're always emailing each other and kind of knowing in our mind, okay, we want to have a Feuchtwanger Refreshed once a year, usually in the springtime. So we start to kind of, what are brainstorming ideas, topics that we would want to work with. So at the time, there was a lot of attention on immigration because of ICE raids happening in Los Angeles. So it felt like a topic very close. And so we knew that we wanted to work with migration and surveillance. And I kind of pointed out to Oliver, we talked about how this German Jewish couple, Leon and Marta, who were refugees of the Nazi period, were actually classed as enemy aliens here in the US because of their German background, despite being literal refugees from Nazis. And so we knew that we wanted to do something in that theme. We came to the idea of Yosemite because as I was working through the archive, I discovered that Marta loved to take these trips to Yosemite. She would go by herself, usually in January, around her birthday, as like a birthday trip. And so here was kind of like the blurb that we put on the flyer. As former German nationals, Leon and Marta were deemed enemy aliens despite being refugees of Nazism. So at this performance, students will present original short plays exploring themes of migration and surveillance, inspired by Marta's solo ski trip to Northern California, specifically on the eve of her 50th birthday in January 1941. So she loved skiing. She grew up in South Germany and would often go skiing. So here's a much earlier photo of her skiing. And the idea for this road to Yosemite came because I had come across this alien enemy permit to travel, where Marta had to get permission from the Department of Justice, the U.S. Attorney. She had to get permission to travel from West LA, like the Palisades, to Yosemite. And I thought that was kind of crazy, bizarre, you have to get permission to take a road trip within the state. But it's because of this alien enemy status. And I also noted that she wrote as the reason for the trip was for health. So I presented this item to Oliver, to his students. I also found that Marta talked about going to Yosemite specifically for her 50th birthday in her memoir. So it's published in German. It's called Nur eine Frau, but this is a rough translation. She says, I drove to Yosemite. In the mornings, you're awakened by the sound of rushing water. Deer wait outside the door. Which played a piece in the plays you'll see. Then she says, my 50th birthday fell during the days of this January 1941. I could have celebrated our arrival in safe America, the possibility of being in the mountains again, in the winter, in the snow. I thought of Europe. So I presented all of this to Oliver and to his students. I went in person to his class. Oh, wait, actually, no, I did like a little video. So it was an asynchronous kind of joining of their course. And I presented these archival pieces to them. And then here is the prompt that Oliver gave them. He said, write a 3 to 5 minute play about Marta traveling to Yosemite in 1941. Why did she want to get away? Why a mountain trip? What was she looking for? Who did she meet along the way? And then what does safe space or grace mean for someone being surveyed and otherwise restricted, right? So the fact that you had to get this permit, what would Yosemite provide someone in her position? So this one, like I mentioned, much smaller event, hosted on campus in the library. So here is the space that I work in. You can see the rare bookcases. These are Leon's books. We set up the actors. And again, it's a library space. So it's not a theater. It's not set up for staging or anything. We just threw up some microphones and put some seats up, like very low stakes. So for this event too, we also hired local actors. So we gave them a small honorarium and 3 actors in total. And then again, Oliver did the stage direction. So I'm not going to show you any of these plays, but just to give you a sense, some of the characters that they came up with were like a Yosemite park ranger, an Indigenous American vendor working in the park, a tourist family, a student from San Francisco, and then these kind of non-human characters, a turtle and a doe, excuse me. And so the through lines that came through in these pieces were really home, the concept of home, exile, what does it mean to be a citizen somewhere, and identity, as well as this idea of like nature and wellness, of being outdoors. I talked when I presented to their class, I talked about this kind of German focus on fresh air and activity and exercise, which really comes through in Marta's memoir as well. So yeah, it was held on site at the library with local actors, like I mentioned. For this one, we didn't do a film recording. We only did an audio recording. And this was just because logistically it was a much smaller event. And Villa Aurora offered to say, well, we could have somebody come and record it for the radio program, but we're not going to do kind of the video this time. And so to wrap it up, those were the two Feuchtwanger Refreshed events that I have co-produced with Oliver. I do have a challenge facing me. The MFA in dramatic writing is being sunsetted as a program, which is really disappointing for the students, for Oliver, for the school. And so I'm trying to think of what are ways that I could pivot. So a goal is to kind of pare this down to an undergraduate course, either in partnership with Oliver or another faculty member. Other ideas I have, if that doesn't work out, would maybe be working with student clubs or affinity groups. So then it's not as much of an instruction, but it could be more of an outreach program. Yeah. And then, yeah, lessons learned and tips if you're interested in using some of this as inspiration with your own collections. The prompts can really come from so many different types of material. So as you saw in the examples, it can come from an archival document. You could also be working from published works, like taking a character in a novel or in a manuscript. You can work with oral history material, newspapers. It's really like an imaginative process with the professor to kind of come up with these prompts, but they can start from anything in the archive. And then the two processes that I have done is like the order of how I've worked is starting with the archival item, then defining with Oliver the themes and creating that writing prompt, or we start with a theme and then we find archival material and then write the prompt. So those are the two ways that we've done it. Just, generally, I think it makes sense to work towards whatever your holding strengths are. And if there's any like strategic initiatives happening, maybe if there's a subject topic across campus people are interested in, maybe that's a great way to connect to a wider project. You also could do this outside of a course. You could have like a contest, you could do a fellowship model. And that might be a way to incentivize students to participate outside of it being a real course project. So a little bit about scaffolding. So Oliver scaffolded the assignment and the project in a few different ways, right? So for the fire last time, he suggested characters and points of view for students to consider. In the Road to Yosemite, he didn't kind of pitch any characters to the students, but he definitely grounded it in a setting for them. You could do a pre-assignment, like break it up into smaller assignments. So have like a character development sketch that's due as the first assignment, then have, okay, everybody bring in your draft and have the professor workshop it, which is what Oliver does with his students, have the students do peer review. And then as the librarian, how I'm trying to support is, I meet with the students either synchronously or asynchronously ahead of the assignment to kind of talk about the collection, give them some grounding in what the topic is and the archival selections. Of course, you want to give them access so that they can keep referring back to these inspirational documents. So I just did like photos. If I had time, I scanned something. And then an idea I had, I haven't done this, but I was also thinking that you could kind of help the professor with a panel discussion. So bringing in another playwright who has used archives in their writing process. So I actually have someone in mind for this who had come on a research grant to work with our collections and wrote a play that was produced off Broadway. So like having him come, have a panel discussion with Oliver. The students might be inspired to hear like, oh, how did these writers approach working with the archive? Yeah, some just logistics things. Depending on the enrollment, it's really important to think about how long the pieces are. So since this was a graduate course, there was like 7, 8 student writers, so it was fine for each of them to have a 5-minute thing that kept the performance within an hour. But if it's, an undergraduate course, maybe they need to work together, because if there's like 30 students, they can't all have a 5-minute thing. You'll be there for way too long. I've learned you want to plan the event, so the performance piece, during the course time. So this just means it's built-in attendance for the student writers and performers. So yeah, if you can audio record, video, it's a great incentive for the students, because then they have that for their portfolio. Yeah, I just want to say there will be a historical anachronism in, the language. They might kind of mix up time periods. There might be historical errors. There were in both pieces that I worked with, but I justified it in that the students are working with the archive, they're getting access to it, they're using their imagination. It's an adaptation, it's an interpretation. So I tried not to get hung up, but I did study history undergrad. So like when I winced at one point in one of the plays when they were like, oh, Pearl Harbor, like they were acting like the US was already in the war, but it was pre Pearl Harbor. Anyway, like the little historical errors will happen. But I think that the plays are so incredible. It's such a cool project that that's not important at the end of the day. So yeah, I really want to hear from all of you. I have some opening discussion questions. If you have any questions for me, but I'd love to spark inspiration if you're thinking about how could you use a collection this way, if you're wondering which collection should I pick, if you work with many collections, if you have concerns, if you want to brainstorm who could be partners for this, if you want to talk about how to scale it down or how to scale it up. So I'd love to open the floor.